Oh, and I just got a YouTube notification.
Yay! There we go. There are two streams going on. Well, it would figure that I would do something like that. Let's see.
My friend hooked on your channel the other week. I'm very proud of myself.
You got what?
My friend hooked on your channel the other week.
Oh.
I was like, I'm going to show you a thing. We were making bread, and then we took a break. I'm going to show you something that'll change your life, and it did.
Well, I'm very grateful. There we go. Oh, and there's the actual stream itself. Hi, everybody. You're in the Google Hangout live stream, Patreon Hangout live stream for The Wish and Amends. Hello, Amy. We're going to get started in just a minute here. As ever, I was behind, and so it took a couple of minutes to get started. We want to give people a chance to get in. Also, there's an interesting question that we're going to start running into. It's hilarious to me that when we first started, or for the first season I started doing this, I don't know, I'd read somewhere that 3 minutes was the ideal length of time for a YouTube video. That after 3 minutes, people's attention started falling off and they stopped watching. Amends is not 3 minutes. The episode guide for Amends is 17. And then once we start getting to Angel and Buffy season 4, the Restless guide is 36 minutes. And I think 5x5 is 26. And the point of these Google Hangouts is not really to sit here and watch episode guides together that you guys could go and watch on your own. As fun as that may be for me to sit and have a live audience to watch. So we need to hi, Nick. Welcome. We need to oh yeah, mug plug. Yes, that was another reason I was late. I had to sprint upstairs to get a coffee, to floss sick merch. I'm a little disappointed by how small it is for my giant ham hands. But other than that, it's kind of weird to see people tweeting photos of stuff with my logo on it. Anyway, so we're probably going to need to find another way into the discussion. Unless you guys want to sit and watch, the long mainstay episode guides.
Well, we're not going to run into this problem for a little while.
Well, Amends is 17 minutes. That to me feels like on the long side. But if you guys are cool with it, I think it's one of the better reviews on the channel. And there are things I think that we've had discussions about. Things I've said in episode guides that were either wrong or brought up ideas for topics. And there's stuff in this episode guide that I want to talk about that specifically relates to the Restless episode guide, so forth. So,
I vote for let's watch it. No, I like to listen to you laugh at the funny bits.
I mean, I feel like Restless could be its own Google Hangout. I don't feel like we should do Restless and something else that would just be disaster.
I mean, that's another way to do it is when we hit 5x5, we could make the entire Google Hangout a discussion of just 5x5. And then we could also break up the episode guide into parts and sort of chat about the episode and the guide as we go through.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was just something to bring up, and I need to make sure I have an eye on the chat because I know there are some Patreon members who go to the stream instead. Russell, we are happy to have you here today, though. And by the way,
thank you.
To all future, to anyone watching who is a Patreon donor and is apprehensive about showing up and being on camera, I get it. I hate being on camera. I don't like live action at all. But you're welcome to show up and just be on microphone, join the discussion. Beach Girl asks, Ian, what happened last night? Last night we did a rewatch of Amends and The Wish on Rabbit. And Amy, I know you've gotten to join. I don't know. And Russell, you've been there. What do you? How do you guys enjoy those? What do you guys think of those rewatches?
I like them. I
had fun.
I like them too.
It was a bit of a shit show yesterday because they changed the interface and I forgot how to make things work, and of course I didn't prep, so we had to move rooms like 3 times. But I still thought it was a fun time.
I wish it didn't work second shift so I could actually join them.
Well, and that's another thing too. Elizabeth, what time is it there?
Just after midnight. Not too bad.
Where are you?
Sorry?
Where are you?
Spain right now?
Oh, okay.
And she's moving to the land of my ancestors.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah. The fearsome Scottish Red. I had originally promised too that we were going to kind of move these around to make the time slot convenient for people. I know we have a lot of people who aren't in the States. Canadians as states are Canada. So anyway, I'm just bringing this up. Please, we don't need to take a whole lot of time discussing it because I know we're a small sample of the Patreon itself. So if you're a Patreon donor, please weigh in on in the comments section. Let me know if we want to move the times around, if you want to try a different slot, yada yada yada. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's talk about The Wish. So now I do the kludgy thing. I'm going to let me get my sound up. If you guys could go ahead and mute yourselves so that my microphone does not pick you up. And I'm going to screen share. Entire screen share. There's my face. There's eternity. Present to everyone. And playback. Speakers. Set. And here we are. When people speak ill of Marty Noxon, I wonder if they remember she wrote The Wish. The Wish employs one of my favorite tropes on television and is an interesting bit of foreshadowing, perhaps one of the more meta episodes in the series thus far, as, other than one specific consequence at the end, the episode has no direct effect on the denizens of Sunnydale. It exists mostly for our benefit. Let me show you what I mean. Buffy and company were out for a picnic when they apparently got jumped by a Cthulhu-headed drooly demon. Are those finger sandwiches? The demon drops and Buffy gives the episode's thesis, how she would have been in trouble without her friends.
You guys.
We see Cordelia as burning an ex-boyfriend effigy, seemingly concluding that the best revenge is living well, as... Is that up to dress code? Harmony introduces Cordy to a new member of the Mean Girls, Anya. Watch Anya's eyes in the scene as Harmony and her pack refuse to let Cordy rejoin the Pride and scorn her by suggesting her next boyfriend be Jonathan. Charisma Carpenter does a good job reacting here. I think we can see in her eyes a couple of realizations. The first is the pain of the scorn. She sacrificed her old life to be with Xander, who then betrayed her. At this point, she's lost everything she knew, but the experience has also opened her eyes a bit, and I wonder if perhaps she sees Jonathan as a person too. She could take up her old mantle again, but does she really want to? I love Oz's bit of dialogue in the next scene. Willow finds him in the hallway and asks him what she can do to make things better. He asks for space. She pushes, and Oz responds with,
I'm sorry this is hard for you, but I told you what I need, so I can't help feeling like the reason you want to talk is so you can feel better about yourself. It's not my problem.
God, I love that line. In this kind of swirling, emotionally ravaging hurricane, I can't in a million years imagine being able to make such a clear and incisive statement like this. He cuts exactly to the quick of things, and does so while avoiding the worst trap in relationship upheaval, pouring more gas on the fire or saying something you can never take back. It's such a sharp, wonderful bit of dialogue, and the specific line made me love his character so much more. In the hallway, Cordelia runs into the new girl Anya, who wonders if Cordy's now wishing any harm on Xander.
I don't wish. I act. Starting now, Xander Harris is going to get a belly full of just how over him I am.
At the Bronze, Cordelia makes her best effort to show Xander just how over him she is. And Cordelia gets knocked into a pile of garbage just as Harmony and the Mean Girls happen by. The next day, Anya puts her necklace on Cordy, saying she probably needs a bit of luck, and Cordelia, blaming Buffy for all her problems, wishes Buffy Summers had never come to Sunnydale.
Damn.
Non-Buffy Sunnydale is considerably more drab. Everyone looks like they're going to a funeral, but still...
Cordy, you reign.
Cordy wants to go to the Bronze, but at the mention of it, everyone looks nervous. She asks about the status of Xander and Willow, and Harmony lets her know they're both dead. Again, a real character here. Cordy looks taken aback by the notion. Clearly, this is not what she wanted with her wish. She ends up walking home. On the way home, she runs into...
Well, what do you know? Cordelia Chase.
Bored now.
Vamp, Xander, and Willow chase Cordelia, but are fended off by Giles and his roaming band of not-so-merry men. The Bronze has been turned into a vamp bar by the Master, a place where even Angel, who Willow calls the puppy, is kept cooped up and tortured. They find Cordelia in the library, lock up Giles, and kill Cordelia in a fantastic twisting shot that to me is like some kind of orgasma binge. It's actually chilling, and I was shocked the first time I saw it. For one, how oddly sexual it was that Xander cups Willow's head against him, as though they were kissing ferociously through Cordelia's neck. Their kiss, in this case, literally destroying Cordelia, where it was metaphorically before in Lover's Walk. And two, with Cordelia dead, how can she undo this wish? George Bailey doesn't die in It's a Wonderful Life. It's absolutely brilliant.
There's a move.
Oh. Well, okay, it's still pretty great. Vigilante Giles in his hoopty-mobile stumbles on some vampires taking people en masse. He jumps out, gets throttled, and the Slayer shows up and saves him.
Want to tell me what I'm doing here?
After Giles figures out the world's deep dive into darkness is being caused by a demon named Anyanka, Buffy heads to the Bronze and stumbles on a caged Angel. Angel tells her the Master is at the factory, the Master's mechanized creation for industrializing human bloodletting. Giles summons Anyanka, who appears in a genuinely creepy shot emerging from the shadows. As they joust and Giles figures out what her power source is, everybody we love at the factory kills each other in a chilling, painful end. With Anyanka's power source destroyed, she is rendered permanently mortal as Anya, and nobody has any memory of it. I found the peaceful, happy shot of the trio on the bench at the end less reassuring than I'd thought, as now it had been made clear to me how tenuous everything really is. There were a few continuity issues here, but that didn't really bug me all that much. In a world of magic and monsters, it would probably be easy to explain why the Anointed One wasn't there, the Master rose during the harvest and didn't need the Anointed One, or how Spike and Drew didn't show up. Perhaps they did, but they found a much more formidable Master rather than the childlike Anointed One. But in The Wish, I kind of felt the strict adherence to the episodes in some way always being about Buffy was a bit of a stretch, specifically when Cordelia redirects her anger towards Buffy instead of Xander. This is not actually a Cordelia episode. It's a Buffy episode about the implications of her Slayer role and the mitigating impact on it her friends have. The very fact that Cordelia is dead for the last third of the episode is evidence enough. But also the very last hanging shot before the alternate universe swings back into reality is of a friendless, jaded, and broken Buffy dying. The camera hangs for dramatic emphasis and, I think, to drive home a point. The parallel here with the season arc is fairly obvious, but for the sake of being thorough,
I don't play well with others. I'm on your side.
I'm on my side, and that's enough.
Not always.
Cordelia serves as an expression of Faith's predicament as well, though a bit more through metaphor. Xander betraying her has left her friendless and crushed, devoid of the status she once had before. Consequently,
He's gotta kill Moped.
Hey, a word of advice. You're an idiot.
But the most significant detail here is Buffy. Without her friends, she has become Slayer incarnate. She demonstrates no real agency here.
You want to stay here and play make-believe? Fine. Not gonna be any help to you anyway. Only one thing I'm good at.
This is adulthood without love, without connection, without intimacy, and notably without hope.
The world is what it is. We fight, we die. Wishing doesn't change that.
It is a meaningless and empty world, at least for Buffy. Note, too, that the person who saves the day again is Giles. Echoing some of the sentiments from earlier in the season, Giles retains hope.
I have to believe in a better world.
How do you know the other world is any better than this?
Because it has to be.
In this case, hope for a better world, even in the face of overwhelming despair. And perhaps it is that which restores reality. On some level, it might be troubling that the episode is essentially self-negating. With the exception of Anya, at the end of the episode, no one remembers what happened. So other than the, at this point, seemingly small change of Anya being rendered mortal, there doesn't appear to be any consequences to the characters within the universe yet. That doesn't really bother me, though. Buffy as a show is pretty meta in ways that escape the characters. The fact that it is, in this case, a meta episode, as opposed to an Allen Ginsberg sticker on a locker, doesn't really bother me. The episode is still significant for us, the audience, in the way that it values Buffy's relationships through contrast. Weirdly, the scariest vampire of the bunch is Xander.
So you're a watcher, huh? Watch this.
Vampire Willow is just kind of, well, sexy?
This just isn't me. And that's the point.
I love Angel's limited role in the story, too. Wouldn't it be interesting if this was the hell dimension that Angel went to? I think that the alternate reality episode trope has a special innate appeal for us, the viewers, and it's an especially vibrant one in a show like Buffy that is all about identity, responsibility, and choice. We are all, in a way, trapped in time, bound to travel in one continuous direction, only forward. But there's always an allure to looking backwards and wondering, a different choice, a different doorway, a couple of more seconds, would we have become someone else? Okay, let me get back to the meeting. No. There we are. Stop sharing. Change my audio back to headphones. And we're back. Are we back?
Has anyone in the Google Hangout not finished Buffy or Angel?
Well, that's this is going to be an interesting discussion. Nick, I know specifically, had not finished the series last time we all got together. Is that still the case?
Starting the final season.
You're starting season 7. That's going to make our men's discussion a little bit of a challenge.
You're good.
Oh yeah.
There are even like wish related things that anyway.
Well, sorry, I'm getting chat up here. Pop out chat. There we go. So that I can keep everyone involved. I'm not sure what our best approach is there. We have Nick here as our acid test. I don't mean to reduce you to that. Seems like an unflattering term, Nick. I didn't mean it that way.
Litmus test?
Litmus test. There we go. So yeah, let's try and avoid spoiling season 7 for him, and that includes Angel season 5 then as well. We'll do our best. But Nick, if we say earmuffs, then
I'm just gonna say spoiler alert after I've said the spoiler.
After, perfect.
I got one of those today, and I'm glad.
The end spoiler.
Oh, that reminds me. It's funny how many comments were on the. It's been a strange week with the remaster video, which should hit 500,000 views today, and the people complaining to me for spoiling The Gift, but not Game of Thrones. I mean, there is a visual. Spoiler alert, everyone. Game of Thrones has dragons and a character with white hair, but it still can be read as a spoiler in there. But by and large, most of the comments that I got for the complaining about the spoilers that I gave were for Buffy, which I find hilarious. It means I'm in the right community.
I just don't know why people are watching those kinds of videos if they're worried about being spoiled.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to talk about a full series, and then I don't know how you can do that without talking about everything that happens.
Yeah.
So some people are already diving in on the episode guide. Yes, there's something in the episode guide that bugs the bejesus out of me ever since. So the one thing that people very heavily took me to task for And what it was I was trying to say something or trying to point out something that had come before, and did so by saying something that was just wrong. Willow is the scarier vampire, everyone. Yes.
I will be fair.
No, Willow's
that
awesome.
was true until you watch season. Xander is scarier until you watch season 6.
True. I kind of believe that we bring Dark Willow and Doppelgangland into this episode. But my point with that was for the discussion of the template model for vampirism, which is coming up next. So Willow's kind of sexiness. We'll just go ahead and say is the template model for vampirism that I brought up in Amends said that the shape of the vampire that the demon drives you to is driven by your desires. And in Halloween, what we had seen was Willow wanted to be seen or wanted to be sexy or whatever it was, but was uncomfortable with it and so forth. So my point in saying that, which I said terribly, and it's immortalized on the internet now with how many 50,000 views, was isn't it interesting how much of a contrast she is to Halloween, and how the demon that took her over created a very particular kind of vampire. That was the point. It was not that she was the less dark. I wasn't trying to sexualize her any more than the episode did, but I was trying to point to how that was a contrast to her in Halloween. Now that I've defended myself, what do we think of The Wish?
Comments about Vampire Willow, but I'll save them until we get there.
Okay. I don't know where to start. Let's start with Nick. Nick, tell me about The Wish.
I enjoy it because I always enjoy the what if scenario. And there was a question I had that my buddy never, because he's watched the series multiple times, was if Anyaka's power was smashed, did every one of her wishes change back, or was it only her most recent?
Well, the power we have to talk about continuity questions in this one, and one of them is Anya's power center itself. So, did the wishes that she made for people undo themselves? I mean, that's thousands of years of Anya shaping history. So, my thought would be no. But what do we think? There's a lot of headcanoning that has to go on with this episode, I think.
Well, crap.
I don't think they undid themselves. I mean, they haven't been undone. Like, for example, in Hellbell's episode, the Anya being left at the altar. There's the demon going after her that was cursed into another dimension and changed into a demon, plotting his revenge, and that wish wasn't undone. So I'm guessing continuity issue here.
And Older and Far Away is season 6, right?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
7.
So,
no, 6.
So Anya says, like, when they think for like half a second that Halfrek is dead, Anya like goes to grab her power center, and then we never actually find out how you kill a vengeance demon. So I'm a little curious on how you kill a vengeance demon. But anyway,
unless you're D'Hoffryn. Wait.
Damn it!
Or cut off the head.
Nick, what episode are you on in season 7?
I've just done the first 2 when this thing came on.
All right. Well, I'm glad that I was the first one to ruin something. Anyway, as opposed to you guys, that's my bad. Go ahead.
Anyway,
I presume that the leader of Vengeance Demons could kill Vengeance Demons.
That would make sense. Thank you. So that's logical.
So presumably, if Anya is like says get Halfrek's power center, like destroy it, then I feel like Anya must know that like it's not gonna undo everything, because Anya's not stupid. And like understands like that, you know, like so much history would be unwritten, like revolutions and like movements and whatever. Like
Yeah.
like you
I
know,
mean,
the fall of the Roman Empire might never have happened or whatever.
yeah. Without getting into specifics, a lot of history looks pretty different without Anya in it. So I gotta think that it just undoes this one particular wish. But again, I think that this episode sort of demands some headcanoning on our part.
But also she gives Cordy the thing, like what?
Well, that's another weird thing, is if that's
then-
the source of her destruction,
And
why?
then Spears wearing it and Giles has it. So now there are two of them.
Russell, were you going to say something there?
Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say I agree with that. I think there's two of them.
Oh, interesting. Or like sort of a multiverse. Well, I mean, Doppelgangland definitely brings in the multiverse theory to Buffy itself. So yeah, there must be multiple versions of the power center. Interesting. Russell, you have any thoughts on The Wish?
It's just a fun episode. Amends is the one I really, really love just because of the soul cannon, but The Wish is a fun episode.
That's kind. I mean, I suppose that's kind of one of my feelings about it, especially. I mean, especially in terms of length of reviews, we'd be able to see that. Jay Goss, I think Josh. I'm sorry, Jay Goss. I'm terrible with remembering names. Suggests Cordy is the anointed one for the purposes of fulfilling the prophecy of Buffy's death in The Wish. So we were talking about The Wish brings up some continuity issues, which I was going to mention, and I think he's trying to fix one of them off the bat. First is the anointed one. Where is the anointed one? What happened to the not anointed one? The next one, Spike and Drew. Did they never come to Sunnydale? Presumably, the Master was raised through the harvest, which didn't open the Hellmouth. So that explains the tentacle monster. In Prophecy Girl, the Hellmouth opens. In the harvest, they were just trying to lower the barrier that was keeping the Master there. But presumably, Luke has been staked since then by the White Hats. And then, of course, we have the complicated question of the seal and the Uber vamp.
Darla! Where's Darla?
Exactly.
Darla?
What happened to her? I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, the easy way out of most of those questions is, well, they all got staked. Giles and Oz and everyone are just pretty darn good. But
for the anointed one, considering part of that might have been the Hellmouth, he could have just been out searching for Buffy. You want to do that?
Well, I like the idea that the anointed one is more of a Jay Goss's idea is that the anointed one is more of a magical status that occurs at a specific point in time. And so that's interesting that Cordy could be the anointed one that brings the Slayer to be killed by the Master and still fulfills the Codex prophecies from Prophecy Girl.
I don't hate it.
By the way, $5 donation from Heather. Had a bad day coming home to relax and chat about Buffy. Has made things easier. Thank you. Cheers. Thank you. I appreciate it. Amy, The Wish.
Yeah, so the first thing that I noticed, especially watching and reading some of the rabbit comments, was that, you know, it's kind of sad how nitpicky you can get after you've watched a show 50 times. Yeah, I have this problem with Veronica Mars when I rewatch that, and I'm like, why wouldn't she have just gone and done the other thing? And it's just like, oh, because I've seen this 50 times and I know how she does it.
Yeah.
And so you definitely see that happening in this episode. And then, like, for me at the end, I was just like, why doesn't the Master drain Buffy? I mean, if if Slayer blood is the end all be all, I don't think he would waste it.
That's true. It's very funny too. I was noticing that as well. The rabbit, and do not let this deter you. I don't think that any of us dislike The Wish. It's a cherished episode, but it is funny, that phenomena of, why does the machine only have one spigot?
Yeah, the whole machine thing. It's like, this doesn't work at all.
Yeah, the number of occurring why questions was pretty funny.
Yeah, and
Budget.
the whole down the rabbit hole of where's so and so and so and so and so and so. And then the first time you watch it, you're not really thinking of that because you're just taking in the whole alternate reality to begin with, and there's a lot there.
Well, and that's always a question that I struggle with writing for these videos. I mean, writing any review, really. I'm working on Eternal Sunshine, which is proving to be as challenging as I thought it would be. It's one of my babies, and it's something I've been putting off doing for a long time. And there's a lot you can look at with the plot of that movie that wouldn't work. No, that this would fall apart. This could not, but the spell of it the first time through, and the fact that they have just the right characters for that story to actually occur, is joyful and profoundly melancholy, of course. But does the fact that plot has issues under scrutiny mean that the movie means anything less to me? Is The Wish less fun because there are issues? And at what point do plot issues break enjoyment? I don't know. That's sort of like eternal questions of criticism. But
for me, when I watch the reviews, I like it when people are talking about what they like about the thing rather than what didn't work. If I ever see any YouTube like, why such and such sucked, it's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I want to hear the good and the interesting. And
yeah, I think it's all part and parcel.
Mm-hmm.
You must not have liked my Go Fish review then.
Oh, well, you can't not. I mean, the only thing good about Go Fish was the line, Xander had the best line of, everybody knows the skin's the best part. When, that's one of my favorite lines of the whole series. And
there's also
good thing about The Wish.
There's also Xander in a banana hammock, and Cordy saying, "We can make this work," to fish Xander in the pool.
Yeah.
Which is an adorable scene. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
I mean, you've made the commitment to do every episode, so time to time, those things are going to happen.
You're going to run into. I don't think there's any of those left. The last one was Where the Wild Things Are, sort of the notoriously skippable episodes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't hate it.
Where the Wild Things Are?
Oh, it's all right. I mean, I don't necessarily like it that much, but it's all right. I don't skip it.
I think Where the Wild Things Are is interesting because it refines even the misstep. I mean, Where the Wild Things Are is not bad, orgasm wall aside. It's just kind of boring and doesn't come together. Is always the way I feel.
Yeah,
about
you can
that
stop
episode.
showing that anytime. Good. Man, I'm somewhat scarred for life.
So The Wish.
This conversation
Our
needs a
moderator.
moderator.
Yeah, we digressing.
Can I speak about The Wish?
Yeah. Hit it.
Okay, cool. Because you mentioned in the guide just now that the opening sequence sort of sets the mission statement for the episode about Buffy and her friends, and it's reiterated later when Buffy runs after Cordelia before Cordelia ends up in the garbage, and she says, but I told my friends about it and it got better. And it's like, well, Cordelia doesn't have any friends. Even if Harmony accepted her back, and that group accepted her back, Cordelia can't talk to them.
Yeah, they're not really about intimacy.
And the metaphor of vampire fights and that sort of thing, being the connection between that and sex and even rape is so strong in this episode.
So I missed a little bit of that in the beginning. Can you say what is so strong in this episode?
The connection between like being bitten and like sex or even rape, like that that twisting shot with Xander and Willow biting Cordelia is like one of like, it's such a beautiful shot, but it makes my skin crawl in like
very much
ways. And yeah, I was like, in the guide when you were like, Xander's the scariest vampire, I screamed. I was like, oh,
you were not the only one to take me to task on that. Trust me.
No, Vampire Willow is like, she reminds me of Angelus type A, meaning the Angelus we meet in season 2, because then Angelus like when we meet Angelus again, it gets all sorts of weird. But there are many, but she's a sadist.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, that's what she cares about as a vampire. She's a sadist, and which means like she's more likely to kidnap someone and drain them and then let them get a little bit better and then drain them some more. And like, sorry, I'm playing out like serial killer Willow fantasies, and that's not useful. But anyway, I really like the even in this universe, the Buffy Giles relationship is still so great.
Yeah.
Like and like I love the way that they created the Buffy's version of, I think you put it as like Slayer incarnate.
Well, I was thinking about that in terms of Restless now too. This Buffy is kind of the version of the Slayer that the first Slayer was attempting to steer her towards in Restless. Yeah. No friends, purely out for the kill, no choice. So that was it was interesting. I hadn't gone back and connected those two moments until we just watched this.
Yeah.
Also, she has the only character she has significant reaction in this episode is Giles, and all she displays is a cold, hard logic.
Yeah. Right.
Because her heart and spirit are dead.
Oh, that is lovely.
And she doesn't meet them.
Nice one.
Yeah, from the perspective of that triple metaphor, that's really great. She's only working with her metaphorical Giles, and so doesn't have the balance anymore. Yeah. Neat.
The Anyanka's outfit when she comes out from the shadows, just like the weird dress she's wearing, just made me think of the traditional burlap and blood larva.
You're talking about the red one?
No, she's like wearing this like weird, like beige weird dress when she
Anya, not
her. And it just reminded me of her comments about like whether to put the bridesmaids in dresses or the traditional burlap and blood larva.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
I actually every time I rewatch The Wish, especially after seeing your video, Anya, you learn so much more about Anya, and like learn more about her in season 7, and I won't, but like it becomes clear to me, like, or became clear to me even in this, like she looks so annoyed and so just like she clearly likes the vengeance, and she's like, yay, someone's suffering, but all of the like lead up to it and the like having to coerce someone into making a wish, like she clearly hates it.
Yeah, her
so much.
Her expression having to hang out with Harmony is just like repulsed. What's the line in Doppelgangland? Do you have any idea how boring 10th graders are or 11th graders are?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
She very much gives the air of, I've done this so many times. Can we just get to the good part?
Yeah. But like, anyway, so I always got the impression that like over the season that like she was really good at vengeance, and it gave her some satisfaction. It gave her purpose, but like, she's never been happy.
Yeah, or at least not for thousands of years. I mean, if trying to parse that with the soul, I mean, trying to parse any demon with the soul canon kind of breaks down in comparison to vampires, because
some demons have souls.
Well, and you've got Whistler at the end of season 2. You've got oh, come on,
Doyle.
Thank you.
Half.
Yeah,
Demon, so
The host.
Demon, yeah.
but which half? I mean,
On his
you know.
mother's side.
Yeah, on his mother's side, exactly. And I don't remember if it's a spoiler, but one of the members of Angel Investigations takes on part demon later on.
If you that's not a spoiler. If you've made it through the first 4 seasons of Angel, that's not a spoiler.
Okay. Well, no, he's watching season 4 right now.
No, I finished. I watched them concurrently.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I haven't started Angel 5 yet. I get a couple episodes into Buffy, then a couple into Angel, then I start watching them.
Well, I mean, just taking Whistler, it's clear that demons probably have some variety of soul. Assuming that selfishness is the most lowbrow, automatic, easily accessible impulse in any living entity, then the capacity to do good against your own self-interest is something that requires a soul by the show's lore, and that's the conscience. So if Whistler is on the fight of good, unless he's some sort of good demon automaton, he's making decisions from a place of conscience, of goodness. So maybe Anya has that capacity.
Or he's getting something real good out of the deal.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. But actually, I'm almost certain Anya has that capacity, but we can't talk about it.
Well, vengeance demons are in that middle ground because they're humans who became demons through deals with Tehafran.
Right.
So it depends on how they became demons through Tehafran.
And maybe Tehafran has like a vengeance demon training program. They don't start you on flaying immediately. You know, first you make a guy wet his pants in front of a group of people, and then you sort of, after 1,000 years, are doing the really hardcore gross stuff. And that has distanced you from...
But the way you get invited to be a vengeance demon is by doing something bad. And then he's like, "Hey, you seem like my type of person.
You seem like my kind of lady. You want to hang out?"
He saw the potential, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, his potentials. Very nice.
I mean, Anya had potential. Definitely.
And then there's Willow in Something Blue.
Well, yeah.
Raphael in chat asks, what do you think Anya's cover story was for living in Sunnydale? Does she have a family? Because I think I recall her mentioning a father. But also, where does she go after school?
So something to do with the utility her father purchased?
I think that's probably just a lie.
Probably just teleported somewhere. Who knows?
Maybe slaughtered someone and now lives in a fancy hotel.
Goes and hangs out in the Vengeance Demon break room.
Love the Vengeance Demon break room.
Oh, Jesus.
Go ahead.
Am I the only one who finds the final? So in the final scene, we have Xander killing Angel, which is great, and then Buffy kills Xander. And someone pointed that out in chat last night, that Xander, Buffy's heart, kills Angel. But then there's this weird sequence where Buffy and the Master are moving towards each other, and they're just awkwardly pushing people out of the way.
Yeah,
like ragdolls.
And I was and we were watching it last night, and I was like, I never really felt how weird this scene is.
Well,
I don't know.
One thing I've noticed is about the Rabbit rewatches is they're not the most conducive to getting sucked into the emotional poetry of a scene.
No,
when we all hang out together, it's kind of like a firing squad. You know.
Slow motion pushing people.
Yeah, I do think that scene sort of falls a little victim to. I think any of the fight choreography at this stage in the show falls victim to slow motion. Once you slow things down, you see the missing punches or the heads turning before the actual connection and so forth, and it just sort of plays out in that scene. What sells it, and I heard it in that. You guys say you think it's funny when I giggle at my own episode, guys. I laughed when Giles said, because it has to be, and I got a little weepy for a second off of like the acting, his delivery required to make that emotional and painful is so well done. That scene between, that's why the I think when you watch it by yourself without sort of us peanut gallerying with each other, I think that scene is the reason why it all works, is because Anthony Stewart Head is selling the agony of that reality with this just wonderful little itty bitty performance. He does so much without wasted effort, without wasted expression. He's spectacular. And that's why that whole bit works. How do you know the other reality is any better than this? Cut to everyone dying because it has to be. So, I mean, just sort of aesthetically, and just like we've been talking about plot holes and so forth, I think those are there. Does it? And I think that scene in a bubble looks a little ridiculous, as does the factory and the one spigot. But I don't care, because Anthony Stewart Head sticks the landing perfectly for me in that scene, and so it works.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a rant. I'm sorry, Emily, if I cut you off there.
No, it's cool. I have one other thing, but Nick was about to say something.
Yeah, Nick, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. In a later guide, this is really quick. In a later guide, you say something about like Oz. It's like occasionally Oz is a little too cool. Like his lines are a little too incisive and like to the point where it's like this feels a little like.
Yeah, let's save Oz for the next discussion for Amends, because I definitely have a bunch I want to say on that one.
Well,
but I agree with you. He's so good.
I was just gonna say that like the thing he says to Willow in this episode about like if I can't help but think that.
Yeah, it's like broken insightful for me.
And the thing is, for me, it's the one, it like doesn't totally ring true. And I think that Seth Green does an amazing job delivering the line. And I think it's a great line, but like, and I like, it hooked me the first time I watched it, but like every time since then, I'm like, no, it doesn't work.
You mean it doesn't play, or he's wrong in saying it?
No, he's not wrong in saying it. It feels like awkwardly disingenuous. It feels like the thing that like your incisive friend who's a third party would be able to say. But like, Oz, what are you feeling right now? Like, how good at compartmentalization are you that you are able to do? Like, what?
Yeah.
So I have been to a lot of therapy that we don't know about, but
or he's intentionally detaching himself because of how much it hurt.
Yeah,
Oz definitely seems like very much a latchkey kid. The scene, my evidence for that being in phases, he's chaining himself to the table for the full moon in his dining room. Like, where are his parents? You know,
what's a latchkey kid?
Back in the day, you would have like a key around your neck. It meant coming home when your parents weren't home, and you'd unlock the door yourself.
Oh, okay.
Incredibly independent, perhaps to the point of unhealthy.
Okay.
Especially at that age, to me is sort of and I say that as a latchkey kid. So
Yeah, I definitely did not have parental supervision after school.
yeah, it was great.
Uh,
Right there, but no.
$5 donation from Tracy. Thanks for the diversion on a dreary day. Thank you, Tracy. There's also I want to make sure I hit a couple of the chat comments. Quinn, what do you think the Wish verse Cleveland looked like with the Slayer?
better.
Property values are up. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, presumably.
Does that mean there might be a Hellmouth in Cleveland?
There is a Hellmouth.
There is
There is one, yeah,
Yeah.
mentioned.
So presumably, so I've heard that it's based on Sunnyvale, California, and Santa Barbara. So put those cities in the Midwest, and there you go. A lot of money and good stuff. I cut you off, Nick. I think. What were you? What do you have?
Yeah. Well, it was it sparked a thing because when she was talking about Xander the Heart killing Angel, it's the character who in the show currently had some of the greatest wisdom in Oz, killed the spirit Willow.
Interesting.
Mm.
Huh. Yeah, I think there was more going on in that scene than I noticed. I'm glad you picked that up.
Who killed Xander in that scene?
Buffy kills
Buffy kills Xander. Elizabeth, did I get everyone? Elizabeth, did I get to you? Sorry
no,
about that.
Not yet. No, it's okay. That's all right. I've been absent for a few months anyway. I love Wish. I always thoroughly enjoy watching it, and but many for very different reasons. Not necessarily for the serious arc, but obviously all the reasons you mentioned. I actually always thought of Buffy in Wish as Faith, sort of, but the worst version of. I mean,
I think that's what they were going for, definitely.
Of course they were, and the
Yeah.
emphasis of her, the version of her of someone who hadn't had friends to rely on or to turn to, has been like exaggerated to the point that she became almost grotesque with the makeup and the clothes, and it wasn't her. I mean, not even Faith. Even Faith had better sense of fashion, but. I really enjoy watching it just for the production value as well, because it's so beautifully shot, and the music, and like the shot when Buffy is you see Giles getting out of his car and helping those people that have been captured by vampires, and then you just see the vampires being just thrown like ragdolls, and then you see the Slayer's legs, and you see the shot of Buffy from below to her face, and she's looking all with the scar. It's so cool. And then, I mean, don't hate me, but I really love Master in this episode, because Master and his wicked sense of humor.
It's one of my favorite appearances of him.
Yeah, I mean, like since the time when he was first introduced in the first season, and he was always. I mean, the first season has a very low production value. It's just you just have to go through it.
Sure.
It's necessary, but like he was so wicked. Like he had such a good sense of humor, and I think that what saved all the scenes with the Master for me. And then they developed his character to the point, and in Wish, when he talks about humans and coming up with the concept that's truly demonic with the mass production, and I just really like the way he delivers, and it's just so enjoyable to watch. I mean,
he's having fun, but it's less campy. I think they've definitely they've found the voice, and I think the comment you made visually, I think that's interesting, because season 3 was the switch from super 16 millimeter film to 35 millimeter film, so the show gets brighter and more colorful. I think they are getting more capable with the cinematography, and then season 4 is the visual breakout season to me. There's a lot season 4 doesn't do well, but season 4 specifically, suddenly they have found their kind of visual voice. Episodes like Fear Itself, with the angles and the way they shoot things and so forth, suddenly becomes much more creative and rich and interesting. But this season's definitely that transition into the more colorful version of the show that we see to the end.
Well, definitely isn't as dark as the season 2 with Angelus. It's so much brighter and like happier almost when they back to high school and Buffy comes back from her, you know, time in LA and stuff.
I think they definitely made a conscious decision to move away from so specific use of the horror tropes, sort of on the nose horror metaphors, and then the switch in film stock definitely made it brighter and less grainy and all of that. Obviously, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about film stock and film grain for the past couple of weeks. Go on, I apologize.
No, that's nothing. No, I think the Wish is fun. It's really fun to watch, and like Nick mentioned before, it's just one of those episodes. What if? And it just gives us so many ideas. I mean, makes us think about stuff. And then you got the Vampire Willow for the first time ever on screen, and it's just it's joy to watch. And she's so naughty and so evil, but I mean, she's so like touchy feely with the licking and like that scene with Xander and Cordelia, like you said, them like biting her, but like almost kissing. It is sexual. I picked up on it today as well when I was doing my rewatch, and it just made me think that they just created this twisted triangle with her and Cordelia and Xander, her Cordelia, like this sexual, but like sort of aftermath of what happened in the Lovers Walk, and it's just so cringy. Like, sorry, I forgot your name. You
Ian?
mentioned it was very creepy. Yes, not Egan.
Emily.
Oh, there you go.
Emily, sorry, Emily. Yes, you mentioned I was just made you cringe, and I felt the same. But in the same way, it's nicely shot as well with the camera going around.
That shot's amazing. I love
Loved it.
that. Yeah, I love that shot.
Absolutely love it. Yeah.
The sexual violence aspect of it makes it particularly disturbing. The layer of metaphor to it
Oh
is
yeah, but
something
wasn't
I
it?
hadn't quite thought about. What I was thinking
Sorry.
about it from the perspective was how their kiss in Lover's Walk damaged Cordelia, and then how they're sort of recreating that kiss in that scene. So even in this reality, it's something she can't get away from with the two of them.
No, she
But
can't.
yeah,
And I think I don't know if you watched any extra, and I'm sure you probably watched some extra features. The earlier interviews with the cast, like there was an interview with James Marsters mentioning the vampire on show, like the basically the figure of vampire, and he said that taking a woman as a vampire, it's like, I mean, biting someone is like taking a woman by a man in a show. So in a way, when Xander and Willow were sent by Master to kill Cordelia, it was like they were taking her sexually as well as killing her, obviously at the same time. It is very cringy,
yeah,
and yeah, I mean, even you think of it, in a few different. I mean, like you said, they did it before psychologically. They hurt her, and they did it physically to the point of, you know, killing her. So
yeah,
it works on many different levels, I suppose.
yeah.
It's interesting.
I think the episode is more complex than that video, certainly, which is too bad. We've already come up with a bunch of good things, and I'm like, I wish I'd included that.
I just remember what Vampire Center reminded me of.
Hit me.
Spike.
Interesting.
Well, it was because I was also rewatching some Angel stuff, and it had the human Spike, which was a good guy with deep hidden feelings, which is a lot like Xander, and they both became Blood and Night psychopaths when they turned into vampires.
Huh. Interesting.
Well, Spike was a poet
I love
and a romantic. Xander's
Yeah.
no poet.
No, but no.
But they both might have a touch of the nice guy syndrome.
Oh, sure. Well, not like Angelus had nothing of that.
No, he was just weird.
Well, I was trying to draw some parallels between what the vampirism is doing, and it's somewhat flipping people. Like it turned Willow from a shrieking Violet into a sadomasochist type. The two good guys into bloodthirsty killers. I couldn't find one for Angel because Angelus is just crazy.
Well, there's one.
Liam was kind of just a drunken do nothing, and
Was there
Jealous wanted to end the world.
So drunk and do nothing to a proactive.
also wasn't there an idea of like his demon being different than other demons, like when somebody's being turned into a vampire and the demon takes over? Wasn't it there some kind of mention or implication of the different types of demons that could be responsible for the different vampires?
I don't think that's hinted at in the show.
Maybe just was the conclusion.
They're not specific that it is all the same variety of demons. So I don't know. Yes.
Sorry.
Amends.
No, I just in terms of the like whole template thing, it just occurred to me. So Liam, human angel,
Yeah.
is like everything he does is hedonistic. He's completely about hedonistic.
Oh yeah.
And then when he becomes a vampire, and we were just talking about how sexual biting someone is, and how and that sort of thing. So if what hedonism is for a human is different than what it is for a vampire. So when he becomes a vampire, this sort of like hedonism that he had as a human becomes this like weird nihilism where he like wants to destroy the world but is also very sadistic. Hello, but is also very sadistic, and I think, like I said earlier, it very much reminds me of the way like what we see of as Vamp Willow, that they seem very similar to me. And when we see Willow later, she does end up partaking in things that are very hedonistic, very just like pleasure seeking, like drugs. And I mean, because like, Angel didn't have hardcore drugs because it was the 1700s or whatever.
He certainly indulged in the one he had.
Right. And
Lots of booze.
Lots of booze.
And yeah, so it just like means something different for each of them, and yeah.
Well, the amends video kind of changed the a whole bunch of things about the episode guide, and it's super long, and I'm gonna try and get us out of here on in a tight 2 hours again as usual. So we should probably switch over. I feel like we could. You guys have dug at some stuff, and we didn't even talk about board now. Which, I mean, there's layers and layers of questions to.
That's just chilling.
Yeah. And there was a great question in chat: was Harmony more evil as a human than as a vampire?
Human Harmony is so much worse than Vampire Harmony.
Vampire Harmony is just
hilarious. She's hilarious as a vampire.
Vampire Harmony is just ineffective in what she tries to do.
Well, it's funny. I think she very much fits the model of someone who was a king or queen in high school, and then the real world comes along. And there's an episode in Angel season 5 that is very Harmony centric that shows how hard the real world treats her, vampire or human. And I think that's sort of what's the interesting phenomena is with her. She's sort of that character who found real life quite sobering, even as a vampire. And she dated Spike right after, which probably wasn't the wisest choice. But
I kind of fell in love with Vampire Harmony just because it's like, okay, you're a demon, you don't have a soul now, I can deal with you.
Oh, I love Vampire Harmony.
I knew somebody like Human Harmony and Queen Bee Cordy, and they made high school miserable for me, and so I hated Harmony as a human. But
Yeah,
when she's a vampire, it's like, okay, you're kind of amusing now.
She definitely takes over Cordelia's crown once Cordy sort of comes in and out of the Scooby circle. And Raphael says, what are you talking about? Harmony was Buffy's biggest threat. She was her arch nemesis, and she had minions. But I do have to hold us right there. Let's everyone go ahead and mute yourself. Russell, I know you are here for Amends, so we'll start with you. But let me everyone mute yourself and let's switch over to the Amends guide. Just a second. This could not be a slower process. Okay. And then okay.
Amends is such an odd addition to the Buffy pantheon. It's a Christmas episode whose established universe runs contrary to the show's internal subtext. It isn't silly enough, I think, to warrant the Candy episode moniker, but it does have plenty of flaws. It's bleak, cheesy, loaded with melodrama, and I absolutely love it. This episode for me falls into a favorites category that is very similar to Lie to Me. It has its shortcomings and dramatic oddities, but it's so ambitious and successful in so much of that ambition that I just ignore everything else. The episode opens with a previous Leon featuring the infamous adventures of Angelus, which leads into a flashback of some earlier time in his murdering career. Angel is just reliving one of his old kills in a dream. He stumbles out into a street, and we hear via news report that it's supposed to be a very sunny Christmas. He and Buffy run into each other for some awkward would you call what they went through a breakup? Awkward we shouldn't see each other anymore conversation. As they speak, Angel spies the man he killed in his dream over Buffy's shoulder. Buffy tells the gang, and
I don't want to bug Giles. He's still kind of twitchy when it comes to the subject of Angel.
Oh, it must be that whole Angel killed his girlfriend and tortured him thing. And Giles is pretty petty when it comes to stuff like that.
No, not
I'm pretty sure this instance of Buffy telling him to shut his trap is one of the few times in this series where she does that. At this point in the series, Xander's self-righteousness over Angel has become less maddening to me, and Whedon immediately balances it out when Cordelia overhears him telling everyone he'll be having his annual Christmas campout.
I thought you slept outside to avoid your family's drunken Christmas fights.
The details of Xander's life outside of the group have been meted out very slowly throughout the series, and some of it requires inference.
I just can't believe a Kitty League coach would do something like that.
Well, you obviously haven't played Kitty League. I'm surprised it was one of the parents. Oh, hey, do you want to come to our place tonight for dinner? Mom's making her famous phone call to the Chinese place.
Xander, do you guys even have a stove? Have you ever done an exchange program?
My dad tried to send me to some Armenians once. Does that count? Yep, I knew this would happen. Nobody can be wound as straight and narrow as Giles without a dark side erupting. My Uncle Rory was the stodgiest taxidermist you've ever met by day. By night, it was booze, whores, and fur flying. Mom, hi. Xander. Yeah.
Here we have the first truly clear picture of Xander's home life that isn't frosted with a veneer of Xander's sense of humor. He is without a doubt the most consistently funny character on the show, razor-witted and sharp, but that doesn't run contrary to the idea that his home life is a depressing mess. In fact, it might actually be evidence of it. Deborah Serrani, a clinical psychologist and author of the book Living with Depression, has said that comedy can actually be a defensive posture against depression. Humor is a counterphobic response to the darkness and sadness they feel. Their intelligence, she said, helps them put a funny spin on their despair. Not to suggest that there's a direct corollary in all cases between the compulsively funny and the depressed, only that this is one possibility for it, and in Xander's case, it seems to fit. I'm also not suggesting a free pass for transgressions that no other character in the show would get one for either, but expecting accountability doesn't mean excluding compassion or empathy. Xander is a deeply complex and sometimes confused character whose shortcomings can make me so angry, especially because of how brave and inspiring he can be when he's at his best. Of course, there will be much more to talk about as the seasons roll on. And after Cordelia uses Xander's private life to scorch the earth around him, in comes Oz and tells Willow how badly he is missing her and wants to give it another shot. It's incredibly sweet, and the apparent relief Oz feels in her arms as he closes his eyes and hugs her to him always gives me a case of the manly sniffles. At the tree park, Joyce suggests Buffy invite Faith over for Christmas.
What about Giles? I mean, he doesn't have
No, I'm sure he's fine.
Buffy notices an odd patch of dead trees and is informed by the owner that for some reason those on that patch keep dying out. And we quick cut to a dream of Angel's in which he sees facially scarred men underground worshipping something. And this is one of my favorite scenes in the episode. Anthony Stewart Head is such a tremendous actor and can do so much in what he doesn't say. His face falling as he sees Angel at his door is chilling, and instantly invoked for me the scene between the two of them in Becoming Part 2. He arms himself and invites Angel in to hear his request. Jenny's reveal is a haunting one, but allows us to completely disregard what Giles says here. To quote, "The last time you became complacent about your existence, it turned out rather badly." More on that shortly. Back at the mansion, Angel sees himself as Angelus, tormenting and murdering a housemaid. As he goes in for the kill, he looks up and sees... Buffy goes to Giles and asks him to help Angel. Giles agrees, as does Xander. As the trio does research, Willow shares her fears about earning Oz's trust back, especially in continuing her friendship with Xander. Meanwhile, Angel is being taken through one of Angelus's gruesome crimes at the mansion. Look at this guy's outfit. This is not pre-industrial clothing. This man is describing a murder that Angelus committed between Surprise and Becoming Part 2. I love the chilling thought of what Angelus might have been up to outside of the scenes we saw in Season 2. Angel begs, saying he was a man once.
And what a man you were. A drunken, whoring layabout. And a terrible disappointment to your parents.
Here's a good opportunity to revisit our ever-evolving conversation about the soul canon. In the review for Surprise, linked here in the top right, I brought up the seeming contradiction that the judge sensed humanity in Spike and Drew, but didn't sense any in Angelus. I suggested that maybe there was such a thing as a soul residue that might account for the pure evil of Angel. But that theory has never really sat well with me, especially after reading through the volumes of comments and other ideas people had here on the channel. And the question came up again in the Becoming Part 2 review. It wasn't until I wrote my top 10 Buffy or Angel episodes to pair with Wine and a Good Cry that an idea clicked for me, specifically relating to my number one on that list, which I can't talk about here for spoilers' sake. But what I was missing when talking about the judge was a proper definition of what makes us human. Perhaps it's our desires, our passions that make us human. And perhaps it's those traits that define the characteristics of the monster we become as vampires. As Buffy says in Lie to Me,
You die, and a demon sets up shop in your old house, and it walks, and it talks, and it remembers your life, but it's not you.
if Liam was, as the ghost says here,
A drunken, whoring layabout.
if he was a man without beliefs or passions or desires, no humanity, then there would be very little template for the demon to follow that took him over. Nothing for the judge to burn. No guiding principles other than the demon's pure sadism and a singular desire to destroy the world. A great failure as a man would make a hell of a monster as a vampire. In contrast, we can imagine the man Spike might have been before he was turned. A romantic, a poet. A much more structured template for the demon that took him over. Mind you, that doesn't yet answer the question of whether or not a souled vampire is responsible for the crimes of an unsouled vampire. Nor does it explain why Angel and Angelus are treated so distinctly in the canon. The ghost, or whatever, soothes Angel and tells him to go to sleep. Those of you who are reading several seasons ahead notice the ghost can touch him? In the library, Buffy has fallen asleep and into one of Angel's dreams. They kiss, they have sex, there's a scar-faced man in the corner watching. Angel bites her, he awakes, and Ghost Jenny tries to get Angel to go and kill Buffy, and suggests that whatever the ghost is was responsible for bringing Angel back. Giles has discovered that the ghost is really nothing of the kind. It's a monster called the First, or the First Original Evil. Older than most things, and the scar-eyed worshippers are the Bringers or Harbingers. The Bringers can conjure the spirit of the First and sick him on people. Buffy and Xander hit up Willie's for information and find out the Bringers are underground. They both remark on how hot it is. Oz and Willow are having a video night. Willow has a fire and a little Barry White going in the background.
You ever have that dream
I don't know.
where you're in a play and it's the middle of the play and you really don't know your lines and you kind of don't know the plot?
My turn.
Mm-hmm.
Willow says she's ready to do, well, you know. And Oz says he's not. This might be as good a time as any to bring up one single problem I actually have with Oz's character.
Canapé.
Prefacing, of course, with, I love the guy, but there's an issue. In a show heavily loaded with characters who make mistakes and learn from them, Oz is essentially flawless. His speech to Willow in the van about kissing her was flawless. In Beauty and the Beast, he tried to storm off and make a dramatic gesture, but then very sweetly explained that he was making a dramatic gesture. And last episode, he provided an inhumanly patient and rational explanation to his girlfriend, who just cheated on him, about how he needed space. The worst you can say about him is he gets a little insecure about his wolfishness. And here Oz puts Willow's mind at ease.
You don't have to prove anything to me.
Can I date him? At the Summers house, Joyce has decided to have a fire despite everyone's numerous comments about how warm it's been. Faith shows up for Christmas and Buffy runs up to get her presents and is confronted by
Angel.
Angel shows signs of having been worked into a thirst. I love this 2-up perspective shot of Buffy with Jenny in the background. Very well done. Angel can't seem to get the First's voice out of his head and runs. At the mansion, the First continues to taunt Angel, suggesting he's weak and too powerless to prevent this. The episode answers the question I brought up in Revelations. Does souled Angel think that he is responsible for the actions of unsouled Angelus? Clearly, the answer is yes, which makes sense, of course, and is not incompatible with Angelus's belief that the answer is no.
Dream on, schoolgirl. Your boyfriend is dead.
When we talk about Angel's timeline, we're talking about 3 distinct individuals: Liam, Angelus, and Angel. Soulless Angelus is not Liam, merely a monster created from the template of him. But souled Angel is both Angelus and Liam. As a vampire, Angel can't be free of the demon inside of him, his dark half. Buffy figures out the dead trees from the tree farm earlier indicate the bringers underneath. She drops into an underground cave, beats up the bringers, and ends the spell. The First confronts her and warns her of Angel's impending demise. Buffy runs to the mansion and finds Angel on a cliff overlooking town waiting for the sunrise, ready to kill himself. There is a precedent here for Angel attempting suicide. Don't forget in Season 1, Episode 7, when I suggested he was attempting suicide by cop against Buffy, fighting poorly and freezing at the pivotal moment. Buffy confronts him and tries to get him to relent, but Angel is adamant.
You told me to lose my soul in you and become a monster again.
I know what it told you. What does it matter?
Because I wanted to.
According to Angel, the flaw in him is not the monster that wants to kill, but the human that is too weak to resist. In the review for Lie to Me, I brought up the fact that Joss Whedon has stated he is an atheist and an absurdist, and in the Lover's Walk review, I pointed out that Angel was reading Nausea by Jean-Paul Sartre. Sartre was a key figure in the evolution of the philosophy of existentialism, which, in a nutshell, is the belief that the universe outside of us lacks any intrinsic meaning, but that we can create meaning as individuals through personal responsibility and choice. So what then is absurdism? Absurdism shares a common template with existentialism in the belief that there is no intrinsic meaning to life or the universe around us, but also that it is a part of the human condition to constantly seek meaning and purpose regardless. And what can spring from awareness of that spiritual dissonance is a profound melancholy or despair. The man most principally responsible for contemporary absurdism was Albert Camus, who called the disconnect between the meaningless universe and the insatiable human desire to look for meaning the absurd. And Camus' essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, begins, "There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy." Angel being forced to relive the deeds of Angelus has certainly painted for him a meaningless world and triggered in him an existential crisis.
I need to know. I need to know why I'm here.
Camus postulated 3 possible choices to the problem of absurdity and the resulting despair. The first was the leap of faith, believing in something which was intangible or unprovable. Not necessarily a belief in God per se, though that certainly counts, but blind hope with lack of evidence is another.
You trusting fool! How do you know the other world is any better than this?
Because it has to be. But Camus was an atheist, and it's unclear right now whether the Buffyverse has a deity or an afterlife, though I have something to say about that in a bit. Even if it did, it's doubtful that Angel could get into it, what with the demon in him and all.
Am I a thing worth saving, huh? Am I a righteous man?
This brought Camus to his final 2 choices, and by example he used the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus was a man condemned by the gods to push a rock up a hill. Just before reaching the top, the rock would roll back down to the bottom, and Sisyphus would go and get it. Forever. And here, at the top of a hill in Sunnydale, Angel's rock has rolled back down to the bottom, and he has the choice of whether or not to go and get it, or to stand at the top and watch the sunrise. Camus' answer was to embrace the absurdity that arises from being an entity who hungers for meaning in a meaningless universe, and to continue the hunt for it regardless. By embracing things as they are, we free ourselves from the despair over how things are not. In acknowledging the absurdity of seeking meaning by continuing the search regardless, one can be happy, gradually developing one's own meaning from the search alone. So why not suicide? Well, the absurd must be taken on. It's part of the human experience. Suicide eliminates the absurd rather than confronting it, and so it doesn't solve a problem, but instead ignores it. In other words,
Strong is fighting. It's hard, and it's painful, and it's every day. It's what we have to do.
Of Sisyphus, Camus wrote, "It is during that return to go and get the rock. It is during that pause that Sisyphus interests me. That is the hour of consciousness. At each of those moments when he leaves the heights and gradually sinks towards the layers of the gods, he is superior to his fate. He is stronger than his rock." So does Angel go and get his rock? Does he decide to continue the fight? Well, for tonight, he is spared having to make the choice, as at the end of a sweltering day in Southern California, it begins to snow. So is this a cheat, the magical or divine intervention that brings the snowstorm and spares Angel's life? Buffy is a show that might seem to have an internal contradiction between its subtext and its fiction. We've spent a lot of time on the channel covering the cold, uncaring nature of the universe, the existential dilemma, and how life without choice is barren of meaning. And the show handles these topics unflinchingly, staunchly favoring the perspective that the power and control over all these things is up to the individual and their ability to choose. The individual here being Buffy. That's the subtext, but it's the subtext to a fictional universe in which there are demons and monsters and dimensions of hell. Now, why in a world like that would there not be a contrary force? If not a deity, then some kind of powers that be or force for good. In this episode, the first says he or she brought Angel back from hell, but that doesn't make a lot of sense, as Giles says in the library, that the first doesn't have the ability to affect the real world, unable to do much more than haunt, and even then not without the aid of the bringers. Wouldn't it make more sense that some contrary force for good brought Angel back? Beings that could bring Angel back from a hell dimension might certainly have had the ability to bring in a snowstorm and keep him alive. Is the snow a cheat? I don't think it is. It wasn't our central protagonist that was spared through divine influence, it was Angel. Angel didn't choose. He hasn't understood all this yet, but the snow gives him more time. And the fact that it wasn't Buffy preserves our subtext. The universe of the show is certainly rich with potential for certain outside forces that we haven't gotten to see. Is the snow cheesy? Sure, that's a concession I'll make, along with the guilty admission that I actually love cheese, especially as a side dish to material as ambitious as Amends. For me, this episode is sort of Angel the Series Episode 0, and represents the beginning of Angel's own journey off of Buffy and onto his own show. As the first Evil Jenny comments,
You never were a fighter, Angel. Don't start trying now.
at this point in his life, he's not a fighter yet, but give it time. In his conclusion to the myth of Sisyphus, Camus said, "It happens that melancholy rises in man's heart. This is the rock's victory. This is the rock itself. The boundless grief is too heavy to bear, but crushing truths perish from being acknowledged. The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill the human heart."
Sorry about the noises, everyone. I get a little carried away. Just a second. Sound. Headset. There we are. Stop sharing. Hello, hello. Kelly, hi. Welcome.
Hi. I couldn't sleep.
Sweet. Well, lucky for us then. Yeah. Well, that's a big, swinging, important video for the channel. Certainly. Let me get notes back up here. Okay. Wow, is there a whole lot to unpack in that episode, and so I'm just gonna leave it to you guys. If you guys, it's middle of the night for several of you, I know. If you need to sign out, whatever, we'll go over 2 hours for this, because I don't know how we talk about everything that there is to talk about in that episode. everything from Oz to Xander to how that episode filters into Angel and so on and so forth. I have no idea where to start. Someone raise your hand. Actually, wait, no, Russell. We were going to say, Russell, you were here to chat about that. Let's hit me with what you've got.
Okay. Wow.
Sorry.
No. One of the things I wanted to mention was the soul canon in and of itself. I always assumed it was the seed of human identity. Simply because, well, the soul goes beyond Angel and Spike. There's a certain character in season 5, sorry, Nick, who's consumed by a god person. I won't ruin who, but
okay.
They do mention that the soul is destroyed, which, if it's just a mere moral center, that suggests that it can be created. But if it's unique, like a fingerprint, it is, I don't know, the human identity, I guess.
Well, certainly both of the lores suggest that there is an essence to the soul, such that you can capture it and put it in a jar, even, or the orb of Thessala. There is some sort of thing that can be destroyed. But anyway, go on. I didn't mean to jump in there.
No. So anyway, I had mentioned a while back in one of your boring streams that
that's actually the brand name. He's not giving me crap.
That Angel was cursed through magic, and what if through magic he lost the soul entirely? I was speaking specifically about innocence through becoming, because at that point Angelus had been cursed with a soul.
Okay.
A vengeance curse, and Giles even mentions to Willow that it is a powerful curse, one that could be, he suggests that it's through the dark arts. And I always assumed that his soul was removed entirely through that curse, not when he became Angelus the first time, but just through that.
Well, didn't the spell that Willow performed restore his soul in Becoming Part 2?
In Becoming Part 2, I'm talking between Innocence and Becoming Part 2. When he was Angelus, he was pure. He passed the judge's test and whatnot.
Right.
If that makes sense. And then, of course, in season 4, Angel is just removed through a shaman. So his behavior is somewhat different. I mean, Angelus is so inconsistent through.
That's the jar episode, certainly. And there's and Orpheus is another problem with the whole set of questions in that one, certainly. But go ahead.
Yeah, that one I haven't figured out yet.
Yeah.
I don't know. Angel assumes responsibility because he sees it firsthand. I don't think Angelus truly makes that distinction. He does mention to Buffy, your boyfriend's dead, but just moments ago he tells Drew and Spike, she made me feel like a human being. I don't think he truly separates the two.
Yeah, that's an important error of mine that someone pointed out in the chat yesterday, which I had never actually considered. In that video, I said that even Angelus considers the two of them as the same person. Or no, I said Angelus considers them separate because he says your boyfriend is dead. So yes. Angel's dead, Angelus is now back. However, Angelus said to Spike earlier that she made him feel things. That's not something you forgive. I don't remember exactly what the line is, implying that he is the same person that he was before. He's just now much meaner without the soul itself. So again, you have the identity, the two possibilities, and I don't want to dive too deep in the soul canon because I think it's ultimately flawed. And I've done my best to just figure out a way that a key that I can use to unpack most of the lore. But the two contrasting ideas are one that it's the soul is the conscience, and the other is that it's the seat of identity. And I think the truth is that it's actually just not consistent throughout. The other part of the conversation that you have to bring up is Spike, and we can't talk about it too deeply but Nick already knows that Spike had his soul restored at the end of season 6, and Spike's character in season 7 is sort of a very stark contrast to Angelus and Angel, which layers another bit of confusion on top of the conversation itself.
I would also point out that, and again, I don't think this spoils anything, but Angel is really the only character in that universe that got a soul, lost a soul, got a soul, lost a soul. So we get to see that play out, I guess.
Sure. And an issue that I've heard brought up fandom wise when it comes to Angel Angelus is how, and when I say an issue the fandom has brought up, I'll be specific. An issue that I have brought up in previous conversations is how different Angelus is during different occurrences. So aristocratic Angelus, which we get to see in flashbacks in this episode, is a sort of very different than teenage Angelus in Become Surprise and Innocence onward, is different than the Angelus that we see in Angel season 4. And the way I've sort of parsed that is every version of him is the accumulation of all of Angel's experiences to that point. And so once Angel's soul was restored in Becoming Part 2, there were several years of experiences that accumulated that created a different version of Angelus later on.
Or you could just have moods.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But I mean, Angel season 4 actually has two Angeluses in the same season. You've got Hannibal Angelus and Joker Angelus. So I'm sort of headcanoning as best as I can, but that's another issue for me.
I forget exactly what episode it was, but when Ethan Rain showed up about the demon from the tattoo that was killing them through the corpses and stuff.
The Mark Trigon. Ah.
Yeah. Angel explicitly says that the demon is still present, so it is still going through all of those experiences. So it is still possibly changing.
Still processing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just want to get into his head and want to know if Angel and Angelus are bitching at each other all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly Orpheus implies that they are. But then you have Spike in season 7, which you'll get to consume.
He got a soul out of spite.
Yeah.
Also, and so conscious choice for the vampire might definitely should play a part into that.
If they have, when I've carried the idea of the conscience to its several steps beyond, one of the things that I think the conscience provides is actual free will. Because without it, if you're only capable of acting selfishly, then there's no choice to be made other than the selfish decision. So Spike loves, but he loves selfishly. He loves Drew as a prize, as something for him to have. And I think there's a vision of season 6 of Buffy where that is all sort of consistent as well. And then there's post-Soul Spike, which you'll get into later on.
Spike is a great manipulator.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think part of I said once that Spike is insightful, but he's not always telling the truth. In order to be a great manipulator, you have to be perceptive. You have to have a great sense of And I think that's the poetic aspect of it. You have to have a great sense of people and their vulnerabilities and their goodness and all of that, and certainly he does. Amy, this is a big messy discussion, so jump in wherever you like. Thoughts on Amends?
Well, in just thinking about your videos, I really love it when you go into the whole philosophy of it all, because I certainly didn't know who Camus was before I think I started watching your video.
Every time I hear those lines from The Myth of Sisyphus, I feel that profound melancholy that everyone should read that. It's like 3 pages long, and it is gorgeous.
Camus wrote an essay just called The Myth of Sisyphus?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what I'm quoting in that video. Anyway, go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, and good thing I wrote some things down. The other thing was, as we were watching the video, I found myself laughing at your videos in my head. Like the part where Oz is like, you ever get the feeling that you're on a play and you don't know your lines, and then you shoot over to Willow in her Nightmares episode, and I just found that so funny.
Well, at least there's a laugh somewhere, even if it's in your head.
The other thing that I noticed that I had never noticed before was when they were, like, the Scooby Ying was in the library studying, you actually see Xander delivering the pizza, kind of like
interesting.
The Zeppo-ness of it.
Yeah.
I had never, ever seen that before. And honestly, I've seen this so many times. And I just thought that was interesting after how we talk about it and the different things we focus on from month to month, and how even now, after so many years, new things pop up.
For sure.
So.
Kelly, I know you just joined us in the middle of the night with insomnia. I can identify. Do you have any thoughts on Amends?
Yeah. First of all, great video. One of my faves.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's one of the better ones on the channel.
Kind of not stuff you've mentioned so far, but one of the things when I was rewatching it and then watching your video is just kind of Buffy's reaction to Angel's spiral and how hard she fights to save him. When is this spoiler free, by the way, or is
everything but season 7 is fair game?
Oh, okay, cool. But if you think of Faith kind of struggling with the same things that Angel does, but she decides not to go back down and get the rock. She decides to stop looking for the meaning, if we're using that kind of terminology. She doesn't fight for Faith in the same kind of way. And I think that's something to do with maybe Buffy feels like she needs Angel for her to survive. Like she truly needs Angel, but she knows deep down she could probably survive without Faith. I don't know. I always feel like Faith is so like left to the wind, and
yeah, that's something that has come up for me on rewatches. Is Faith's sort of it's not exactly mistreatment so much as it is just no treatment, no regard.
Yeah.
Invite her to stay in Dawn's room. She's staying in a crappy rundown hotel. I mean, you know, it's no one is responsible for what happened to Faith besides Faith, and that's certainly just like Xander and my advocacy for him and his tough life in this episode and in Restless. I'm not suggesting that makes the lie okay, or the things that he says, or Into the Woods, or anything like that. But I think that expecting responsibility and compassion for a character are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And man, does Faith not really get much of an olive branch?
Yeah.
There's one scene where Buffy goes to the hotel and says, "You can trust me," but then there's sort of nothing really after that. And I've been struck by that in multiple viewings now too.
Yeah, she's like she goes see Faith once. She's like, "Oh, you can trust me," and then it's like, "Oh well, at least I tried." See you later, Faith.
First thing the mayor does, put her in a nice home.
Yeah,
First
he treats her. Yeah.
thing, you know.
And something else that you just mentioned there, and that's a big theme in this video, is like the Xander defense, which I kind of never knew about the Xander hate until a couple of years ago when I started talking to people as adults who would watch Buffy, and they were like, "Oh man, Xander, he's what a piece of he is."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What are you talking about? Doesn't everybody love Xander?" And they're like, "No." And so I went back and rewatched it, and I was like, "Oh, geez." But then I've also come round full circle, and I'm kind of on board with the Xander defense a bit, and I really liked the kind of Xander section in the Restless video as well.
Thank you.
And anyone who I know who loves Buffy, I've been like, can we just talk about Xander, because I've got a few points. Anyway, well, that's a later discussion, but yeah, I really enjoyed that part of the video. And then the other thing that kind of struck me as well is just specifically that scene on top of the hill when Buffy is crying. I don't think we ever see her that vulnerable with any guy ever again, like any of her male love interests. I think that's like she's kind of spent, like, especially by the end of series 3, but like with Riley and I just don't think we ever see her that vulnerable again in terms of like in terms of with somebody she loves, like obviously with Dawn and her mum and stuff like that, but not in the same kind of context.
There's certainly something about the first love, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like a sort of completely blind hope of that it is eternal. I wonder if, sort of traditional first love isn't defined by its total lack of barriers, by its I mean, the cynical part of me calls it Bangel speak, and I described Twilight is sort of a version of Angel and Buffy. Sorry, everyone. It's a version of it, but it's sort of the bad aspects of it. But I think the description that I used for it was teenage dying star implosion relationship.
Yeah.
Where that's sort of where the rest of the world dies away.
Yeah.
And I think that is sort of present there, and then the reality of real life creeps in as she has more and more relationships, and I wonder if there isn't something lost in that process.
Yeah, I think she doesn't allow that dynamic again.
Yeah,
because
the one I think of is Giles. Now, that's not a romantic relationship, but it is one of her relationships with a man. And certainly in one of her moments of intimacy that I find so gorgeous is in The Gift, where she talks about, I don't know how to live in this world if these are the choices. But she doesn't speak to the men in her life the way she speaks to Giles or to Angel in this scene. So I think that's a really interesting observation.
Maybe because they were there from the beginning. And Xander was too, but Xander's Xander.
Xander. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Xander, he's just so Xander, that guy. But yeah, I think kind of post season 3, it's a side that we don't see from Buffy, except for I think Dawn's the exception to that. But anyway, that's the kind of thoughts I had.
Good stuff.
Until Angel breaks away and has his own series, and until like season 6 even, Giles and Angel are defined by their relationship to Buffy.
Totally.
This is not true of the other men that Buffy engages with.
Well, and that's something we see Giles' subconscious resenting Buffy for in Restless. or at least that's my take on aspects of his dream. Is his life has been so defined by her, and Angel leaves to find himself. I mean, Buffy was his way back from nothing in Becoming Part 1, we see. But then, sort of the next step is letting her go and him going and defining himself in a more useful fashion than boyfriend. Lauren, you joined us late in The Wish as well. You have thoughts on Amends?
I mean, one of my favorite episodes and one of my favorite commentaries of yours, actually. I've stated before how much I really dislike Xander. I'm one of those, and I mean, he's done things that are, in my opinion, unforgivable. Like, lying to Buffy, saying Willow says kick his ass.
Right.
And I mean, everyone who I've talked to is like, oh, he wanted her head to be in the game. That's not his decision to make. And she's the Slayer. I fully believe her head would have been in the game had he told her the truth. He just chose not to. And,
I concur.
Yeah. And there's other things like, okay, yeah, this is season 6. So seeing Red when Spike tried to rape Buffy and Xander took it upon himself to tell Dawn what happened.
Yeah, I always forget about that one.
Can I just make one really quick?
And it's also in such a petty fashion. He's talking to, she's anyway. Yeah, I don't need to go off on that. Sorry, that triggered. I got triggered. Kelly, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out really quickly, just a kind of, I think it's an epidemic in the Buffy fandom. Just how that we're talking about how much we dislike Xander for the events of Seeing Red, but people still love Spike.
People love Buffy.
Yeah, and I don't know. I know Spike was soulless and Xander isn't soulless. Don't get me wrong, but I'm talking about, they love the character of Spike, which so do I. But I think Xander doesn't get a pass on things that other people get a pass on. And I also think he has done unforgivable stuff. Please don't get me wrong. But I think Cordelia has. I think Willow has.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And
I think because we maybe relate to them more. We love them a bit more. They get anyway, continue. I just wanted to say, isn't it funny that we're talking about how much we hate Xander for Seeing Red?
You make a very valid point, and kind of ties into my other point is, as much as I take issue with Xander, he's definitely my least favorite of the Scoobies. However, Ian makes very valid points on him, and it's like, I'm like begrudgingly like, okay, fine, I'll give Xander a pass on that.
It's so funny how many comments the Restless video got that sounded exactly like that. And again, I never once said free pass for anything. Wait until we get to Into the Woods.
But yeah, it's
I don't remember which episode Into the Woods is.
That's the Riley Goes Home. Riley flies away on a helicopter episode.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, I actually kind of felt bad for Xander when Cordelia kind of attacked with I mean, I think the other Scoobies kind of know that Xander doesn't really have a happy home life, but I also think that Xander, when he was dating Cordelia, told her things in confidence, and because at the time they were dating and he could trust her. And then, granted, he cheated on her, but Cordelia threw that out there in front of everybody just to hurt him. And it's like,
yeah,
I cheated on you, but
it's funny how that scene, as a piece of fiction, I think she looks okay. I mean, sort of like Queen Cordy again, but it doesn't look like. And we feel bad for him, but I just have, like, in my own personal life, I've had couples going through a breakup where one of them aired dirty laundry in a form of a vendetta to the friendship circle, and it made them look very poor, and she does not look poor in this scene. It's weird how that sort of same scenario plays differently in the fiction than it does necessarily in real life. The other thing I wanted to point out too is it's a big miss for me that the Restless video does not talk about his relationship with Cordy. So my contention was that Xander is being driven by a desire for what he doesn't have in order to fix not turning into his father. And good Lord, does that play out in seasons 2 and 3. So season 2, when she was bad, he's bored. He's already in the pack, said he knows of Willow's crush, but he's not interested in her. And then they start to make out, and then Buffy are on the verge of kissing. Buffy comes back. Willow goes on the back burner again. He's with Cordelia. Suddenly something can happen with Willow. Something does happen. And he's the only one that doesn't really express an understanding of what he did wrong. He feels bad, but Oz and Willow actually make amends. And Xander never really has a moment of, oh, I understand why that was bad that this happened, or why it shouldn't have happened, or what I did wrong. There's no self-reflection from him. And I think that's consistent with what I was talking about in Restless and what drives him, what is driving him on a regular basis to fill the void inside of him. Go ahead, Nick.
Xander, as I've been doing this, he has a habit of going after people he knows he couldn't overpower. In effect, that is initially why I think he didn't try to respond to Willow. But then she started getting into magic and all that, and he saw he saw the fact that she could defend herself, because I presume, based off his home life, that's how him romantically he's trying to stop and not be like his father.
When you say overpower, you're saying he wants what he can't have?
Buffy could physically stop him if he tried. Willow could use magic. Cordy could verbally tear him to shreds. They all have ways to stop him if he tried to act in a way that he might see in his father.
I mean, perhaps he's attracted to power, is what you're saying.
Kind of like that way.
And certainly his dad is the main source of power and dominance in his life. That's an interesting take.
Yeah, I think maybe he kind of, wants the power by, if he feels like he can't get it for himself, wants power by osmosis, And
Anya is definitely not an exception to that.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I want to left out the Restless. Yeah, we covered. I have lost track, so someone who I haven't gotten to, please jump in. Emily.
So please don't yell at me.
No, I won't. When do I yell?
No, this is just general. I don't actually like the episode amends that much. I don't.
Oh my god! No.
I've tried rewatching it. Watching the guides has made me appreciate Angel in a way that I did not the first few times I watched it, and I actually kind of like it now. But I don't know. I can't get into this episode. The emotional hooks just don't. They try, and there's just nothing there. So that's one unpopular opinion.
It's not as unpopular as you would think, and I have replied and tweeted this out. Anytime someone says to me, does anyone else? The answer is always yes. Does anyone else not enjoy Amends? Yeah, I've gotten lots of that. It's a very different kind of episode. It feels very experimental. It's very Capra-esque. I mean, it feels very like It's a Wonderful Life, or sort of his version of the Scrooge story. So I get it. Feels like a departure.
I do have a couple other thoughts. Well, one of the reasons that it doesn't land is for some reason that scene on the hilltop. No, the reason it doesn't land is because the whole tortured, I don't buy Angel in any of the scenes. I don't buy. There's something about it that doesn't work for me. That weird shot where he's doing this, Sorry.
No, it's all good.
It doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't come together. And I don't know why. I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff that's said in the hilltop scene. And I think, and when we were rewatching it last night, the one moment that actually got me was when Buffy finally says, "What about me?" to him. And that was like the only moment.
Well, it switches the perspective to a character that you actually feel like you have a connection with, right? So that makes perfect sense.
But there are some like the scene between Buffy and Faith, and the moment where Giles like lets the like short interaction where Angel shows up, and then
So
Giles
good.
like I mean, Anthony Stewart Head is perfect in every way.
And another detail I missed in that video is he's wearing the shirt he was wearing when Angelus tortured him in that scene. Yeah, when he opens the door, he's wearing the same shirt. And so it, once you,
Unwashed.
Yeah, unwashed.
I have one really big beef with this, and it's a nitpicky thing, but it pisses me off. Willow is Jewish. It's mentioned like 5 times in the entire series.
Yeah.
She's like Jewish when it's convenient, and it really annoys me. It's like,
Thank you.
Willow, what? Like, where's Willow munching on matzah? Like, where is it? Where is it? I want some like does Willow clearly doesn't keep kosher, and like, fine, I don't know.
Well, and she clearly cares about it too, and yet there's no evidence for that elsewhere.
And then even in Gingerbread, the one episode where we see Willow's mom, like, I don't know, like, where is her Jewish heritage coming from? She's like, Allison Hannigan is like this skinny little redhead, and her mom is this skinny little redhead, and like, I mean,
The other thing too is I mean, carrying it a step further, I wonder how she processes goddess Hecate and the entire pantheon of gods into that, unless it's more of a social identity thing than an actual religious practice.
Could be her ancestry.
Sure.
I could talk more about like, because it's like it's an ethnicity, it's a religion, and it's a culture.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to get into all of that.
Yeah, no, but I get it. It's enough to point out that it's not consistent.
Also, something that you've pointed out is I hate, like, the more you watch it, and especially the front half of season 3, it's like, where's Faith?
Yeah.
Because it's convenient now. And then where's Faith? And then, like, she only starts consistently being there when she goes bad.
Well, yeah. So the mayor is one of my favorite big bads, and it frustrates me. I don't know what I would prefer. I complained about the token big bad show up in Halloween with Spike, and Angel in Go Fish when he bites the dude from Prison Break. I hated those token appearances of the big bad. To me, it was diminishing of them. But the mayor disappears for like most of the first season. And I think that what I said in the remaster video is true. I think they were figuring out a way of storytelling that hadn't quite been done in this fashion yet. And so these seasons are sort of them finding that voice. Season 5 is, serial storytelling perfection to some degree. But this season still has those sort of one-offs and whatever. And the other thing is they always spend the first half of the first season, it seems like, resolving the issues from the previous one. And the decision to bring Angel back in this season was a huge one, where they sort of had to go on all of these tangents that had nothing to do with the mayor before they could, move on, and before I think they understood what they were going to do with Faith and the mayor and kind of move forward. He doesn't really get interesting to me until she turns anyway. But was that because he was not present or didn't have enough character growth, or because they're just more interesting in proximity to each other? I don't know.
Logistically speaking as well, I think that like for the mayor and face contracts, they could only be in a certain number of episodes in the
That's
season,
interesting.
so that then they have to create the story to fit when they can put them in there.
Well, she was also 17 when she was doing, when she was doing season 3. So I know she had limited work hours, so that might apply even more. But no, nonetheless, I mean,
I'm sorry. That's like, because she looks older than Sarah Michelle Gellar. She's like, okay, sorry.
well, and I wonder if that I mean, Charisma Carpenter was what, 28 when the show started. So I wonder if that isn't a filter effect from having a decades gap in the age of the actors anyway. But no, she does seem older than 17 to me. It's kind of nice that they actually have an actress or actor the age of the character that they're supposed to be.
We don't know how old Faith is supposed to be.
16, 17, kind of in that range. I think the potential age range is all kind of in the same window. Also, I wonder how you age out of being a potential. That's neither here nor there. But
Ask Kennedy.
Kennedy. Burn.
Oh, that's going to be a fun series to do the episode guide on.
It's going to be a long way away.
The first Slayer, she didn't look 16. Did.
No, that's
the Rasta Mama.
Rasta
Mama. So, Oz, this is one of the only videos that has an edit I made, and I've told this story before. I made an edit to this video after I published it, because there was originally a joke included that wasn't landing for people. And in a video that, certain videos have a priority or a level of importance to me. And it was not that people got that joke. It was the absurdism stuff at the end. So originally I sort of went in on Oz a little bit more for his perfection. So I wanted to bring up the Ozzy Sue question, because I think it also brings up an interesting question for seasons 4 and 5. Oz isn't exactly a Mary Sue, but certainly he fits some of that criticism, being a voice of the writers, which you brought up in the previous video. Him saying something so insightful that doesn't sound like that character or that age group. He's not, at this point, particularly prone to any sort of mistakes. He knows the right thing to say. It's okay. I can wait. From the very beginning, he knows what the perfect thing to say. Now, I love him, and I don't think that a Mary Sue is necessarily a bad thing, or it's not a rule to avoid those kinds of characters. But I do wonder how everyone, and I know everyone loves Oz. It's the only character I've never heard anyone say, I hate Oz. Gosh, so kind and always saying the right thing, drives me crazy. Until Wild at Heart, of course. Now, first of all, I'm curious how you guys feel about him to this point, and I wonder if Wild at Heart wasn't an attempt to introduce some complexity into or some flaws into his character, and did they work?
Oz is interesting in the aspect that until really that episode, we don't see a lot of facets of him. Because
he's very withdrawn, yeah.
Yeah,
stoic.
You mentioned how he's independent, so it's like it's gotten to the point where looking at it, it's like until that episode, it feels like he's only really there because he knows what's going on, and he's in a relationship with Willow, and that's the only reason he's friends with them, but he wouldn't intentionally start hanging out with them, except for those 2 points.
Well, he was
wolfing his wolfenness.
Yes.
I mean, certainly that's a flaw in metaphor. I think is supposed to get at aspects of masculinity, and he was sort of the character for that. But is that a flaw?
Oh no, that's not what I was saying.
Yeah.
But I think you in one of your videos you frequently compare Angel to wood, and so you say something along the
Even
lines.
in Why You Should Watch Angel, I compare balsa pine
Right.
and aspen. But yeah.
Right. So, but when he's on Buffy, you mentioned that like any little tiny bit of like character development, like you have to take it because he doesn't get a lot.
Right.
And I think that he and Oz are similar in that way. Except when Oz leaves the show, he's not leaving for his own show. It's Seth Green going to do other things with his life. But it's, yeah, because the like, I don't know, the whole Veruca thing never just always seemed kind of weird to me. I understand where it ends up, and I think that his insecurity with being the wolf and then being confronted with someone who's not insecure about it, and that's sort of like the lure of the lure of that is like makes sense to me, and so in that way it makes sense to me. Like weird, like I can sense you, you can sense me thing, like just creeps me out.
I mean, I was even willing to buy that in that episode. What I always struggle with in Wild at Heart is his total lack of pragmatism. Him making decisions for the plot that don't seem grounded in the character of Oz that we've seen to that point. Not telling anyone what happened, not telling anyone he got out of his cage, baiting Veruca there without saying anything. All never really felt properly in character to me.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go on.
I agree and disagree. When you're like that hardcore in denial about part of yourself, as Oz is with the wolf, like it's like he wants it to not be there. He wants to do everything in his power to pretend it isn't there. And which includes not talking about it, not telling anyone about it. Like maybe I relate a little too much.
I mean, there are scenes where he's sort of in denial about the wolf aspect and telling Willow to get away from him. And if we read the wolf as, I forget exactly what the wolf stands. It's an aspect of masculinity no, because it represents both Buffy and Angel in their sexual drive. So it's not specifically masculine. It just represents sexual drive. So him ignoring that is a part of him, and then his uncontrollable attraction to Veruca kicking in because he never really grappled with that aspect of himself. I think that reading is clean. Then Kelly, were you gonna say something?
I was gonna say, which was kind of linking into your point, Emily. I love Oz, and I personally don't mind how kind of perfect he is because
no one minds, but it is interesting.
But my issue with it comes at Wild at Heart when it's suddenly he's acting completely imperfectly. It's like, no, not believable. Completely takes me out of that being Oz. And I do get what you're saying about the denial that he has, but I just don't feel like that is how Oz would deal with denial. So I think what they've done is they've kind of set themselves in a bit of a trap with Oz. So when they do want him to do something bad, it's people don't buy it and they just disconnect from that episode. One, because it's painful, and two, because it's just not Oz. You're like, Oz wouldn't deal with it. Like, Oz wouldn't do that. And I know that storyline did get kind of rushed, and that might be why. And
sure,
and that kind of thing.
It was a band-aid for a problem that came up after they'd started that season already. And I think as that, I still think Wild at Heart is gut-wrenching and lovely.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, obviously. Oh,
yeah.
And then one of the other things.
Oh, sorry.
Just a quick thing to go off what somebody said. I can't remember who. One of the things, small issues I have with the show, as much as I love it, is I love how close the main three are, but then I always feel like the kind of secondary Scoobies are on the edge, and
Sure.
they never feel as. And there's some that I get, Anya isn't as close to Willow and at the start, and then they have triangle episode, which I totally understand. But there's a scene where Oz goes patrolling with Buffy, and it's just so uncomfortable. And
Is that in living conditions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry, what?
I missed what you said.
Oh, when Oz goes patrolling with Buffy.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it just feels weird. And you're like, God, they really, if you take the main three out, or if you take like any kind of one of the main three out, like it would be a very awkward group. Like I wish they just melded them a bit more with this.
And that's sort of what I was getting at. That was sort of what I was getting at with Faith earlier on too. It's like sometimes the Buffy circle, the Scooby circle feels a little exclusive.
Yeah.
And Faith felt outside of that season the more I watched. Sorry, Emily.
Yeah, they solved that, or not solve it, but that becomes less of a problem in season 6 and even late season 5, which is nice because then Anya and Tara are integrated into the circle much more.
Yeah, Tara even shows up in the opening credits. Sorry.
But I was going to say my favorite Oz moment, hands down, is it's later in season 3, and I don't remember the name of the episode, but they like have this giant urn thing, cauldron,
choices,
destroy the box of Gavrock or whatever. And in exchange for Willow and Wesley is like, we have the thing, we can do the thing. And Oz just sort of like, and they're arguing with him. It's like, no, but Willow. And then Oz just like gets up and smashes the thing.
Yeah.
And then just sort of nods at Buffy and she's like, thanks. Which is like weird, but like that's like the only time Oz like
he's emotional.
Like to me, like that's Oz being cool. The rest
punches Xander in the face. Don't forget that.
Yeah, he punched
Oh yeah, he does punch Xander in the
That's
face.
nice.
That was a great moment.
That's for making Willow cry.
And then he apologizes like 2 seconds later. But
so
I mean,
is still my favorite moment. But yes, I forgot about that.
To Nick's point, he was specifically created as a foil for early season 2 Willow. But that was one of the reasons that he was brought on the show. So in a lot of ways, he reflects that he's not particularly anxious. He's very composed, and he unlocks something in Willow through that relationship. And maybe perhaps as she changed, that became a little more unsatisfactory. I'm not sure. That word never applies to Oz, which is the problem with the difficult part of that conversation. Nick, go ahead.
I think we just found out Oz is a person who kind of bottles his emotions, because 3 times we've seen him be kind of emotional. Veruca, the box, and punching Xander.
That's true.
He bottles things up,
and then immediately apologizes.
So there is a flaw with Oz.
We found it.
Huzzah!
With the exception of Veruca, 2 seconds after punching Xander, 2 seconds, and like immediately after smashing the what's-its, he's like totally cool. He just like, he smashes the thing and he just like nods at Buffy. And he punches Xander and he's like, that's for making Willow cry. And then he's like, sorry, man, and helps them up. So like,
yeah, I mean, part of the reason I feel like the reason we've been wondering why I've been wondering why this is a relevant conversation is the show is so loaded with characters we love making mistakes. I mean, characters expressing flaws, and Willow trying to brainwash Xander with magic in Lover's Walk, and yet no one never forgives Willow for that particular experience or whatever. So he's an interesting phenomena in that context, I think, was part of what I was trying to get at.
I mean, Willow gets
the exception proves the rule.
I think that Tara, I mean, because when Willow cast the spell on Tara, they were starting to move past it, but then they really can't.
You're talking about the writers? or the the two of them.
Tara didn't really forgive Willow for casting the spell on her twice. As a matter of fact, cast a memory spell on her twice, and all of her other friends. And I mean, she broke up with her because of it, and she was. I mean, I think when Tara did finally go back to Willow and say, there's still trust that needs to be rebuilt. There's still a lot of issues we have, but can we not talk about that? Can you just be kissing me right now? I think that was meant to be that, okay, I missed you. I love you. I want to be with you right now, but this isn't forgotten. We are still going to talk about this.
Yeah, we are not fixed, but I mean,
and then
yeah, we'll get there.
And then Amber is in the credits.
Yeah, and then she's in the credits, and like, damn it, Joss, you don't need to come here. You're killing people off. You have a problem.
That was a mean joke. I apologize. Elizabeth,
hello.
Hello.
Sorry, sleepy.
I know it's very late there. I just wanted to give you a chance if you had anything you wanted to throw out about Amends.
I mean, I love Amends. It's not much I can criticize about it, if at all. I mean, I don't feel at all the way Emily feels about it. I don't know why you don't like it. It's weird. I mean, it's. I mean, I respect that. Anyway, I love that there's a flashback at the beginning. I love flashbacks in any form, especially, on Angel when it becomes more developed. I guess they really show what they can do, the producers. But like in regard to Oz, I do agree that with his character, during my rewatches, I always felt like his character could be fleshed out. I mean, because he wasn't really like it was like written to be so cool and like perfect, like not making any mistakes, and like he always had the right things to say. And then in Wild at Heart, I did feel like it was a little bit out of character for him. I mean, I don't necessarily feel like I did buy it. It's a great episode. It's very emotional and stuff, but it felt rushed. Like it could have been dragged on for a little longer to build up to that moment when he left. So that was a little bit disappointing, I suppose.
One of the reasons I brought, I mean, we have to talk about Oz regardless, but one of the reasons I brought it up was because thinking about his arc reminded me of someone. Now, don't jump on me for saying this, but it reminded me of the way in which they handle Riley's arc. Okay? Now, I'm not comparing Riley to Oz. I am comparing Riley to Oz, but for very different reasons. The writers of their own admission said they didn't know how to write. I think it was Marty Noxon specifically said they didn't know how to write Riley. And he's in season 4, he's a bit of a paragon. Yes, he's misled and sort of deluded or what have you. And there are flaws to his character that may or may not have been intended by the writing. His jealousy of Buffy's power in season 4 and her number and so forth. But in sort of a similar fashion to Oz, I think there is aimless development. Oz is more interesting. Seth Green, they obviously had more fun with his character than they did Riley. And just like Wild at Heart, Riley's sort of seeking out the vampire prostitutes to suck on his arm always felt a little out of left field for me with that character in particular. So I'm just wondering, maybe I made up the parallel, but it kind of seemed like similar storytelling struggles when we were watching it last night, and I wanted to throw that out there. Kelly, yes.
Oh no, I was just silently agreeing.
Oh, okay. I thought you were raising your hand in class.
I don't like
I'll
Riley.
raise my hands in class.
Go ahead.
I think the parallel is. I mean, it's not like fully apt. I think they end up fleshing out Riley's character a little bit more. And I think part of the reason that Riley feels, at least to me, right at this moment, feels like more of a fulfilled character is because of the Forest subtext bugle. like that is like for me, that's like added more dimensions to Riley. But yeah, it feels like it. I mean, Riley was just useful, and then he was annoying.
He was a storytelling tool for Buffy. Oz was introduced as a foil for Willow. I mean, there are parallels there that I thought were curious.
It's just like where Oz ended up being too cool, Riley just ended up
too bland.
I don't know, like what? I don't know, like at least Oz's dramatic moments, even though they're like 5 seconds long, feel real. Whereas like you have like sweaty, shaking Riley and like I hate that episode so much.
Oh yeah, that two-parter is really a struggle for me.
In any case,
Russell, I just wanted to give you a chance too. We don't have you on video, so you can't actually raise or wave your hand. But if you, is there anything you wanted to throw out, or are you good?
The whole Oz thing, I don't know. With his werewolf, it's always been treated like once a month type of deal. And so when we get to that episode Wild at Heart, there's a lot of issues with his werewolf that he's not aware of, and he's taking it on for the first time, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah.
I mean,
so maybe not in denial about that aspect of him, but not fully familiar with the implications of it for him in his life.
Yes, which would come into play later with New Moon Rising, when he woofs out with Tara and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I'm not trying to be hard on the character in particular. I just think he's an interesting sort of storytelling anomaly on a show like this. But I was going to throw to Amy, and it looks like we lost Amy.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
There was one thing I was going to say, and now, frick, what was it?
Well, we got into a little bit of the Soul Canon. I do find the parallels to the end of Amends and 5x5 particularly striking. One of the important parts of the conversation, even though I think the Soul Canon is ultimately impossible to parse, I think it's important because it's a major aspect of Angel's show. So one of the things I wanted to ask Amy about is I say in this video that Amends feels like Angel the series episode 0, and partly that's because it sets up his need for redemption. The idea that he needs to do a certain amount of good in his life in order to make up for all the bad deeds he did when he had no soul. And if Angel and Angelus are two separate characters completely, that makes no sense. And it completely undermines the point of Angel's show, because there would be no need for Angel to make up for the deeds of a completely different character. But if the soul is the conscience, and Angelus was driven by all of Angel's present impulses and desires, then that explains his guilt and the need for redemption on his show. Amy, hello and welcome back. You said during the chat that you considered I only have eyes for you episode 0. I'm curious what you meant by that, because I couldn't see it.
Yeah, I was thinking more in the idea of, he could carry a show. Like, this is
okay, gotcha.
Totally build on this and see where it takes us.
I think that episode is actually, what you're saying is actually the episode Whedon saw where he thought that as well.
And I'm sure that's where I got it from.
Yeah, when he was playing the teacher and said, "I loved you with my last breath." I didn't mean to emote when I said that.
I was thinking on what you just said about whether if he has something to atone for or not. People take on other people's guilt all the time.
Sure.
So even if he is still two separate entities, he might think he needs to pay for the misdeeds of Angel because, it was his purse,
There's a term for that.
What was that, Nick?
There's a legitimately old term for that. They're called sin eaters.
Interesting. I heard that term for the first time recently, and now I've heard it like 3 times in the past week.
I've heard Sisyphus has come up for me like multiple times in the last few weeks.
Huh. Everyone should read The Myth of Sisyphus. There's a wonderful scene, and I bring it up later on in an episode of, I think it's in a stinger of one of the Angel episode guides. It's in my favorite MCU movie. Bucky Barnes is the Angel Angelus character in the MCU, the brainwashed killer who eventually has his humanity restored and feels for everything that the Winter Soldier did. And in Captain America Civil War, my favorite MCU film, they've just had the fight at the airport and they're flying to Siberia. And Bucky says to Cap, "I don't know if I'm worth all this, Steve." And Cap says, "All those things, it wasn't you. You didn't have a choice." And Bucky says, "I know, but I did them." And that, I don't know why that scene emotionally nails the Angel dilemma for me so perfectly in a way that I never really got on Angel's show itself, but it does. And ever since I made that connection between those two characters, I sympathize with Angel's character and dilemma on his own show quite a bit more than I did before.
So what you're saying is that we need to send Angel to Wakanda.
Everyone needs to go to Wakanda.
Wakanda forever.
I
think they use that.
I love Bucky.
I love, and I love Cap, but they're also beautiful. So I feel very confused about it all.
I'm not ready
So
for
are we.
guys. I'm not ready.
It's never too late to be vicarious, Ian.
Kelly.
I was just gonna say they use that idea in quite a lot of things. Of the first one that comes to mind, shamefully slightly, is it's at the end of True Blood season 2, and there's a character called Eggs who's been possessed, and he had murdered people when he was possessed, and then he recalls the memory of doing them of murdering people, but that is. He wasn't even present. He doesn't even have the memory of murdering those people until the end, and he goes mad when he remembers. And honestly, that kind of thing normally really pisses me off. I'm like, it wasn't. I don't think it's normally sold very well, and it's like it wasn't him, and I can understand it being something that needs addressing and dealing with, but he ends up. I think he ends up killing himself. But they were so separated. Whereas in Angel, I think they settle that actually really well. It's the only time it doesn't piss me off when they do that kind of thing. I think it's because Angel, I always feel like Angelus is kind of just like Angel is thinking these things that Angelus thinks, except for the murdering things, maybe the murderous things. He's thinking them. He's just got his filter on where he's like, actually, don't say that because that'll upset Buffy. But the thoughts still occur to him.
Sure.
But Angel doesn't have that filter, so I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's like because he does have those thoughts, but Angel has the conscience to feel guilty about them, and that because he feels like he is that person. That's where so much of the guilt comes from. I think that's why it works so well in that program as compared to other programs where it's people feel immense amounts of guilt, even though it might as well have literally been a different human being that committed those crimes.
Yeah, it's a science fiction storytelling idea that I've seen in a couple of different contexts. And someone described a Babylon 5 episode to me that is very famous for a similar kind of thing, except the crowd. Well, I won't. I'm not going to spoil it. I've spoiled enough in the past couple of weeks. Nick, go ahead.
Related to that, there's actually reminded me of something. In the show Teen Wolf, one of the characters gets possessed by Gitsune, and when he gets over, he goes, "I remember everything I did. I remember enjoying it." And that's part of the thing that kind of brought me back. It was like Angel might remember everything Angel has did, and he would remember all the emotional enjoyment.
Well, he says in Amends, she told me to lose myself in you and become a vampire because I wanted to. It's not the demon in me that needs killing; it's the man. Suggesting again that the human aspect is the portion responsible for desires. And that part of the vampire themselves. By the way, I just wanted to point out we are at 2.5 hours now. We've gone way beyond. I know for some of you it's very early in the morning. So if we want to, we could put a stop there. I feel like we could go on for much longer about all of this, but there's always the next episode.
I have 2 nitpicks actually.
Go ahead.
So in the Bringers of the First Evil, the runes over their eyes, it kind of takes me off because they have the runes of Algus, which is divine protection, and Ingus, which is true love, music, and harmony.
So it feels like a writer was
So you're
flipping through
saying
a book of runes.
They're a band.
They're misunderstood musicians.
They're a costumer or makeup designer thing where they were just like, that one looks good.
Actually, that just like Fear itself, that's kind of interesting. The college kids opening up the book and going, "Hey, there you go."
Yep.
Maybe that's where that came from.
Sorry, I need to go, guys. I got some hungry puppies.
All right, Lauren. I know
night,
it's going long.
Also, in your guide, you're like, "Why would they go say that? It's the first evil. Why would they say the truth?" When they're like, "I brought you back. Why the hell would they be truthful?"
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it would be such an easier conversation if you had watched season 7.
Yeah, we're skipping a whole aspect of the conversation. No, it's all good, Nick. One thing I would do to change about this guy too is I certainly bent over backwards to not say the words "the powers that be." There's there's an entire paragraph just describing the idea of a higher power and that they brought Angel back instead of the first.
You said some sort of powers that.
Yeah, you did.
I did.
The entities that is.
Yeah. Now, why would there not be a higher power or some kind of power that be? As though I just made those words up. That's non-contextual.
Did you?
Spoiling. Yeah. No, I did not.
What?
Well, let me go ahead and end things there, guys. Again, I think the thing I love about this episode too is look at the amount of mining and discussion that we can pull out of it is pretty insane.
Way off track.
We need to. Well, that's what we're here for. Like I
love that it was Jenny as well. That it appeared as Jenny.
The Jenny reveals in this episode are stunners when Giles steps aside and she's.
You mentioned mining, and my friends borrowed my storyteller's pickaxe.
Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
My buddy has a bunch of pencils that have pickaxe erasers, and he calls them the storyteller's pickaxes.
Oh, interesting. That makes a lot of sense. Sorry, I'm looking at the upcoming episodes. So I don't like gingerbread, but I figured we could vote.
Gingerbread.
Okay, that's why I was bringing it up.
What else? What are the next 3 episodes?
The next 4 are Gingerbread Helpless, which we have to do.
Yeah.
And then the Zeppo, which we have to do. So next week is either Gingerbread and Helpless or Helpless and the Zeppo.
I like Gingerbread, but I would also but at the same time, I other than us just like mooing at each other, I don't know that there's much. I think it would be more interesting to skip it and just go for Helpless and the Zeppo because.
There's a lot of mine in those two episodes.
There are fewer and fewer episodes that we're going to be able to skip. So, like, while we have the chance, let's like get to the good stuff.
1 for Gingerbread, 2 for no. Nick.
Nah, I don't care for Gingerbread. Like, we could talk about it. I wouldn't have anything to say.
3, Kelly.
I love it, but I'm happy to go with the group. And I know people who say it's quite a triggering one for them, so I'm happy to give it a miss.
Well, that's an abstain.
Yeah, I'll go with the flow, whatever.
So it sounds to me like just numerically, that's a no. I wish that YouTube streaming had a poll feature so that I could throw up polls for questions like this. The one thing I'll say about it then is it's the completion of the Camus Absurdism trilogy. To me, the most important scene in that episode is the playground scene. I do know it's important to keep fighting. I learned that from you. It's not why we fight. We do it because there are things worth fighting for. And the powerful bit about Amends that Angel then gives that gift to Faith is Buffy showed him that he is something worth fighting for. And Angel then does that for Faith. By refusing to do what she wants at the end of 5 by 5, and sort of the emotional poetry of absurdism that is written into those 3 episodes is so important to me about this show. Incredibly rich and vital. Go ahead, Nick.
There's a quote. I don't remember where I got it. Was everyone can die for something. It takes something amazing to be worth living for.
I think that plays out. So we are doing Helpless and the Zeppo.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. And that date is, Boris gave it to me before, April 27th. April 27th. If anyone wants to bring up changing the time slot so that this can be more convenient for non-Americanidans, I completely understand. Throw that in the chat on
I just need to
Patreon.
know in advance so that I can tell my boss that I'm not available.
Well, I've been trying to get it up earlier. It actually was in the channel news video. I'm trying to do a channel news video every month now. Just sort of, here's where we're at. Speaking of, I'll just run down real quick what we're working on. But yes, April 27th, and I'll make sure to get the time up at least a week in advance.
Great.
For the thing.
But that's okay. I'll just
Still working on Eternal Sunshine. It's proving to be kind of a difficult review for me. Hoping to have that up by the middle of the week. But I'm writing it. It's kind of funny. When I first started doing the episode guide, I would not have described Buffy as one of my darlings. It has definitely become one of them in the process of doing this, and sort of writing and distilling stuff for the episode guides has brought it up for me. But I would classify Eternal Sunshine as one of those ones that I'm like, well, I'll do that someday. So we're finally getting to one of those. So it's bringing up a lot. But anyway, there's that. The next video, a secret video after that I'm not going to tell anyone what it is. And then why you should watch Firefly, and then Buffy versus Dracula. And onwards with Season 5, Angel Season 2, and the Firefly episode guide.
Oh, fun fact. I was really bored at work today. And I looked up like which episodes were Joss written and directed. The only season opener he didn't do was Season 6. Fun fact. That's all.
Did he do Buffy versus Dracula?
Oh, no. I just always forget about Buffy.
All good.
Wait, maybe he did. I don't know. The piece of paper is in another room.
Oh, and Boris pointed out also, by way of keeping track of the schedule and these kinds of events, we've been working, Boris specifically has been working on the website, and the website has a calendar. that will set to your time zone. So these kinds of events, the planned releases, and all of that will be in a calendar with what we should watch and so forth, so that you don't have to depend on me because we all know how that goes.
Yeah.
So,
also, my update in the eternal catch up on media, I have finished Firefly, and my goal is to at least finish Buffy before the next Hangout.
All right, then we can be spoiler free.
I've been working 6 days a week the last month. That's why I missed the last one.
Well, we all have strange priorities. All right, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and end it there.
They don't take it as a valid reason to take off.
I understand.
I don't have to give my boss a valid reason, so. But I work a shitty part-time job. It's like.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ian.
We'll see you in a month.
Bye.
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 Bye.